let's get into the conversation. Good morning to you, Albert. How are you doing?
I'm good. And how are you too?
I'm also fine. It could be better.
Of course.
Right now,
What's
this
happening?
it is well. Right, let's talk about this whole policy to the ordinary Ghanaian. What does it really mean?
It's to the ordinary Ghanaian. Basically, what it means is that um, government owes people, and then at the moment and the next foreseeable future, government will find it very difficult, first of all, to pay the interest on the debts that it owes, the investors. Then secondly, before the government again will pay the maturities. So what government intends doing is that, okay, because I'm constrained and my revenue is not able to take care of my basic needs and then pay your interest, let me enter into arrangement with you and then allow me to extend, first of all, suspend your interest payment, then secondly, extend the payment of your principal, and then two, the interest that will be renegotiated. So basically, that's it. So, first of all, let me extend, the payment period for the debts that I owe you. Then two, let's renegotiate, the interest element of it. Then as and when I have to pay you that as well. So basically, that's what it is.
There's some technical terms in the policy. My mom called and she asked what haircut is.
Haircut, basically, the actual, technical term for haircut is realized investor losses. So as an investor, when you're going to invest in, let's say, an instrument or in a particular investment scheme, you are expected to realize some return on investment, or what you call return on investment.
Right.
But then, since it's an investment, and investment comes with certain level of risk, there is a reasonable, assumption that you can also make losses. So, when that situation happens, then we term it realized investor losses.
Right.
So that's what it has been nicknamed haircut. So because it's like shaving off part of your either your interest or your principal or both of the two. So that's the genesis of the entire nickname of haircut. But the actual term for it is realized investor losses.
So which type of haircut do you want? Do you want bald, or at least they should leave a little for you?
I would have preferred the babush. At least that one.
At least there's something small to support you, right?
Exactly.
I see. Now, is it a call in the right direction to help the ailing economy?
And the fact of the matter, and in reality, nobody really wants to be in this situation.
Right.
First of all, no government will wish to be in this particular situation. Then two, no investor goes into investment and wish to realize losses. So nobody really want to. But here we are. What are the options for us? Government is limited. There are only two options. Either you agree to that, or government, announces default. Default basically means I won't be able to pay you anything at all. Or even if I'll pay you, then it will be very minimal of what you initially borrowed me.
So you
which
think
should be worse than, this. And then default also comes with, if I declare that I will not be able to pay you anything, or I'll pay you just something small, let's say about 20% of your principal, then it have dire consequences for government itself, and then you, the investor, as well. So hence the option of renegotiating the debt or restructuring or debt exchange.
you think it's the right way to go?
At the moment, yes, of course, because we don't want to declare default. If we declare default, the average or industry standard recovery rates or the number of years it will take government to recover is from about 12.7 years to basically about 13.11 years. So basically, it's not less than 10 years.
But people are going to lose their money.
Of course, so it becomes sacrificial.
I
So
see.
sacrifice, let me also sacrifice, and then let's also, all of us, going into the future, will at the end of the day realize the gains from the sacrifices that we make. So basically, that's it.
Do you think enough consultations were done before this policy was announced?
Not at all. Not at all. For what we learned and from what the various players are saying, basically no consultation was done. If there is any, just some few people were gathered and then actually talked to, so we can't say it's a negotiation or consultation or dialogue. No, nothing of that sort. And that is showing in the number of, funds that are rejecting the offer outright. I get it.
Yeah.
If there was actually a dialogue or negotiation or consultation, we won't be seeing this level. Of course, there will basically be some level of resistance because nobody wants to lose his or her money in any way. But at least this level of, outright rejection from the various funds will be a bit lower than what we are seeing. But as we speak, basically everybody, even the trustees of pension funds are also saying they have not been consulted. So basically, if government says they've consulted people, who really have they consulted? They've not consulted anybody. So, and you see, and then that brings us to the problem at hand, and which will basically, some of us or who understand the situation will say that the deadline set by government is not going to work, and they have to extend the deadline. Because, and the best case or the best case study they said they are following, this is not what they did, the Jamaican situation. Jamaica basically, they had a very extensive, consultation, dialogue and negotiation with the industry, the investors, that both large, they started with the large bondholders and then got their buy-in into the entire offer, then allow the bondholders to become the sponsors of the program. So it wasn't the government who was at the forefront of the thing. So they basically sold the idea to the larger bondholders or the big players. And then the big players, once they bought into the understanding of the entire thing and say, okay, that's the best option to go, then they also sold it to the rest of the industry. So it took a very long time for them to arrive at a point where government now says that, okay, I'm giving you an offer. But here in the situation, when the government is going to, do this or undertake this exercise, they rather took the last end of what the Jamaicans did and then put it at the first, which shouldn't have been. What they are doing now, take it or leave it. Or
So what should they have done? I say this because it looks like it's the same with e-levy as well.
Exactly.
Enough consultations were not made, and then it was not effective, and then Ghanaians also disregarded it.
And the same mistake was done with the financial sector cleanup. And then landed us in a situation where we incurred a lot of debts, which doesn't really make any investment sense or any financial management sense. So, like I said, they said they are using the Jamaican situation, which is, of course, it's a good test, case scenario. But you don't.
First of all, explain the Jamaican situation.
So
to
the
us.
Jamaican situation basically was like our situation. Jamaica had two debt restructuring programs, one in 2010 and then one in 2013.
Did it work?
Okay, so yes, of course it worked.
Okay.
But what happened was that in the 2010 scenario, and let's not forget, all this program or this debt restructuring program precedes our IMF program.
Right.
So it's the same for the Jamaican situation.
I see.
So usually IMF sets a standard that for it to work and for IMF to give you the program that you need 100% buy-in of all the investors. Of course, government hasn't given out enough information, neither has IMF even said anything as to the percentage threshold set so far. So we work with the test case, which is 100%. Now, the first instance was the Jamaican Debt Exchange. And they got So once they allow the industry to lead the whole thing and become the sponsors of the program, there was basically 100% buy-in. Now, if you said you are, restructuring debt, one thing that has to give is that fiscal discipline, because it was fiscal recklessness that led to the situation that we are in, and that is basically for Jamaica as well. They were overspending, they were over borrowing,
Right.
overspending, over borrowing. Then they got to almost about 135% of GDP to debt. So when the program was finally approved and then the exchange was done, instead of government to adhere to fiscal, discipline and then reduce the deficit and once you reduce the deficit, it means that you are reducing borrowing, and effectively, of course, the exchange will shave off part of your debt, especially the interest payment part of it, which will lower your debt burden. But within a year and a half into the program for Jamaica, then the fiscal discipline was thrown off gear. Then the whole thing collapsed. And then IMF had to put a hold on the program that they signed up to. That led to the second, program that they call National Debt Exchange, or NDX, in 2013.
Right.
So, and then once that happened, then it now becomes very difficult for anybody or any investor to believe that, well, I am sacrificing. You have reduced to, you refuse to sacrifice anything.
Exactly.
And then what you were doing before the problem occurred was the same thing you were doing before the, problem occurred. So why on earth will I sign up to your program this time around? So it took much longer for them to negotiate this one to get the entire 100% buy-in. And IMF also refused, with the benefit of hindsight, that when we gave you the first opportunity, you didn't adhere to it. So this time around, and when they got almost about 99.67% buy-in, it was left with only 0.3%. IMF said, no, we are not going to give you any program.
Right. Do you think Ghana's situation would be different, or we would have to go for the second time?
From how government started the entire thing, that's where we are heading. And
It looks like
yes, basically
the
that's
first one won't work. We'll have to go through another phase.
unless something change, because one government has refused to adhere to fiscal discipline, refused, and how do you adhere to fiscal discipline? It has to show in your deficit figures.
Exactly.
The goal is to achieve surplus, budget surplus, or fiscal surplus. But in this situation where government is saying make sacrifices, they are projecting to do 6.6% deficit for 2023, for instance. But that wasn't even the way the Jamaicans, did it. So governments basically refused to do anything. And it's clearly shown in the budget statement. For instance, when government is saying, I'm not going to employ anybody into the public sector in the near future, government is planning actually to employ about 1,557 or so people at the presidency or the office of the government machinery. Government has reduced to collapse some of the ministries, some of the development authorities, which industry is saying, those are the sacrifices that you have to make if you really want to, achieve fiscal discipline and reduce, the overspending that you continue doing. But so how then do you achieve the fiscal discipline that you needed to now go to, a fiscal surplus or a much higher primary balance? Because for the program to be successful and for our debt burden to reduce lower than, let's say, the unsustainable level of over 100%, we need to maintain not less than 8% to 10% of, fiscal surplus or primary balance for the next foreseeable future before we can even be talking about reducing debt to a much more sustainable level by 2028. But if government is still insisting that the bloated government size that I'm operating with is what I'm going to operate with, then how do you achieve it? So basically what they are doing is only front-loading today's problem to tomorrow. The next 2-3 years, this whole thing will collapse, and especially with what the approach they've adopted, instead of adopting the consultative approach, they decided, I'm offering you, take it or leave it. You know, a situation where the average investor is now caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. If you decide not to take it or have the buy-in, then you lose part of your principal. And then if you decide to go with government to which you are not upon your sacrifices, there is no guarantee that will achieve the debt sustainability that you have to achieve.
Right.
Then why would I subscribe to? Why wouldn't I just cut my losses at the moment? So that's the conundrum at the moment.
Right. There's